Whoop. Oh. All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the February 28th Finance Committee meeting. I'd like to call this meeting to order. We do have a quorum. And the next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. I have a motion to approve as is or any changes. Can I get a motion?
So move.
Second.
Jimmy. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Needed item C, approval of the meeting minutes. If there are no changes or deletions, I'll need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. Item 2A, strategic staffing proposal. Ms. McLean.
Actually, Dr. Harris is going to present the strategic staffing proposal for an extension of what we've done previous.
Excellent. Dr. Harris.
Absolutely. Good morning, everybody. So last year, the Board of Education approved a retention and recruitment plan for the following schools. We have Forest Hills, East Union, Monroe High, and Monroe Middle School. The plan called for a $4,000 bonus for specific areas, which were English, math, science, and EC. We chose those areas because those are the hardest teachers to find at that point, and they still remain to be the hardest teachers to find. The proposal is for the upcoming school year, 2023-2024, that we continue that same recruitment and retention plan for the following schools: Forest Hills, East Union, and Monroe High School. We're proposing something a little different for the upcoming school year. For Monroe Middle School, we're proposing a $5,500 stipend retention recruitment bonus, for that school due to hard to staff disciplines across that school. And that will be for every teacher. And that money will be coming from ESSER funding.
Dr. Harris, do you have information at easy reach as far as the vacancies at these schools?
Correct. So one example that I can use for Monroe Middle School is Monroe Middle School currently has around 20 beginning teachers, which is a tremendous amount for any school. Most of the beginning teachers are coming from those schools are between 11 and 12, which is also a tremendous amount. Monroe Middle School specifically had around 11 vacancies before the start of the school year. Once we implemented this strategy, those vacancies were filled. So it was very helpful moving forward.
Excellent. So it is effective and used by ESSER funds, which will be the last go around, unfortunately.
That is correct, 2024.
Any questions from the committee?
None from me.
Todd, Joe? If not, I'll get a motion to entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion. You got a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All righty. Item B,
Thank you.
23 budget amendments and transfers.
Good morning. We've got our second budget amendment and transfer request, additional state funds that we've received. We got our final allocation of transportation funds in state. They give us 70 to 80% at the beginning of the year. And then once we get into the year, they give us the additional allocations. In federal, we've had a few small changes where they've added a little bit of funding or we've applied for some grants. EC normally gets a lot of their funds as we go throughout the year. We've also got a little bit of funding that we've received in our special revenue fund. The transfers that you see on state, as you all know, we have several restart schools. The state designates that we transfer funds from several different accounts to fund those schools. And the state transfer that you see, the majority of that is where we've moved those dollars from, position allotments for teachers, for principals and APs, and allocated those funds to the restart account. Then with the federal transfers, you'll see that there's just movement between account codes, really just more of aligning to expenditures for Title I and other federal entitlement grants. And that's really it for any of those. Does anybody have any questions?
Any questions from the committee? If not, take a motion to recommend to the full board.
So move.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All righty. Audit contract.
So as you'll see, we have our 2023 audit contract. At the last board meeting, we were presented with our FY22 audit presentation. So it's time for us to begin work on the current year. So I would just look for you all to approve our audit contract for the current school year.
Any questions?
Are we rock solid on this? We good in all areas?
Yes.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Oh,
Entertain a motion to recommend the full board.
so move.
Second.
And a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 All righty. Item D, fiscal year 23 summer program, staff compensation.
Yes, so we are starting to work, and I believe you all that were on the curriculum committee saw a presentation for our summer programming for this year. These are the same allocations and hourly rates that we did last school year or last summer, with the addition of student tutors. As you know, we've got some students that have been in this second semester going to start working with a lot of our younger students and their peers tutoring. So we've added that as one additional category.
Any questions?
All right. Yes, Mr. Chairman, Dr. Houlihan, this is for you. You know, I can't help but to remember a few summers ago. Just want to make sure we're all everyone's on the same page and we are locked in, and you know, there will be no misinterpretations of anything that's happening for our summer program.
Yes, sir. We are locked in. We are ready to go. We learned some lessons last summer from the year prior, and really had no issues last summer at all. So we've talked to Dr. Tyson. We'll be hiring our site administrators after the board approves this funding allotment, and we should be good to go.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Dr. Houlihan, with our staffing, if approved by the full board, what will be our capacity for the number of students that we can serve over the summer? How many?
I would have to go back to the curriculum committee presentation. It really depends on the staffing levels and the number of teachers that we can recruit. I know that in years past, there have certainly been more students that probably needed to come to these summer programs than we can serve. I don't, in terms of an exact number, I'm not quite sure.
Okay.
I think historically we've served well over 3,000 to 4,000 to 5,000 children. When you look at between each individual camp, I know that this coming summer, our CTE programming, Mr. Davis is planning to expand that because of the success that he had last summer, which is great.
Excellent. Any other questions? If not, look for a motion to send to the full board.
So move.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Righty. Item E, fiscal year 24 ESSER funding priorities.
Yes, so in your packet, you'll see a sheet that I normally provide as part of the FYI. Every month I do an update from the state site that shows all the accounts that we have currently that are ESSER funds. I've highlighted in green the items that where we still have funding availability. If you scroll to the bottom, you'll see, as we've done previous, we did the same thing last school year. You'll see additional designated expenditures at the bottom. So this is the continuation of several of the items that we've been funding centrally for a lot of our schools. all of the English language learner support, the EC department supports that they've needed for additional contracted services. We've got school level instructional support, all the tutoring that goes on in our schools and the supports we've been providing through that process, the contracted psychologists, the contracted mental health and nurses, along with the reading specialist positions that we funded this school year that will continue in elementary schools next school year, if approved. Then there's some instructional technology softwares and assessment tools that they've been using to assess student progress and growth, as well as the summer programming that we just discussed. That total is right at $14 million in allocations, which based on where we are currently would leave right at $3.5 million going into next year. And as you all will remember, these funds expire at the end of 2024.
Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, question for Ms. McLam. Just as a way of sharing with the public, and as much as can be shared at this point, because I'm sure you're doing a good job of preparation for this. What kind of give us an overview of what kind of things you're kind of trying to put in place that when ESSER stops, just some ideas on some things you'd like to see happen that we're being proactive about.
Jimmy,
I was going to say, Dr. Houlihan might want to weigh in on that.
well,
Okay.
hold on. If we could hold off on that, that might fall under the information. There's an item in there specifically addressing after ESSER funds go away. If you can hold off, Jimmy, that's actually an agenda item later on. So
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman, absolutely. Yes, sir.
So if I'm reading this correctly, Ms. Lamb, we have a total allotment of some $91 million, of which we've expended 72, with a balance of 18 and some odd remaining as of January 31st. Am I reading this correctly?
That's correct.
Okay. So unlike some stories you hear from states and school districts not utilizing the funding, I'll let everyone know that we are utilizing it. And we have, as we've talked about in today's meeting, we have commitments in place. We're going to run this well dry, do what we can for our kids while it's still available. Any other questions or a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
And a second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Thank you. Item F, 2023 procurement plan, school nutrition services.
Yes, they're required to present their procurement plan for approval by the full board. So they've included that documentation in this because of the effective dates of implementation. We've just asked that it go through this month for approval.
Any questions? If not, I'll look for a motion to approve.
So move.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 It is unanimous. All righty. Then we'll move on to information. I think this is the item I was referring to, Jimmy. It's ESSER sustainability plan. Ms. McLam or Dr. Houlihan, whoever wants to take the handoff on this.
Mr. Chairman, before they speak, let me just apologize. I had hip replacement surgery. I might just be a step off my game. I should have known that. So please accept my apologies. And I want to thank Mr. Price for representing the Finance Committee yesterday. He was there to be with my wife, and I greatly appreciate him for that. He represented us, you all, real good.
Well, we wish you a speedy recovery and want to note your dedication the day after your surgery. Here you are handling the people's business. So we appreciate that. All righty. Item 3A, ESSER sustainability.
I'll take it first. So, good morning, board members. As you all have mentioned, we received over the past several years over $90 million in COVID relief funds, all of which have gone to helping our children recover from the impact of the pandemic. Those funds expire at the end of 2024. And so obviously we certainly recognize that we're not going to have that 90 million. So what are we going to do about it? The items listed on the memo that was provided have been really discussed thoroughly with our cabinet staff. And these are the items we've identified that if we wanted to continue certain initiatives, these would be the initiatives and the dollar amounts that we would need. I wanted you to see that now because we've got to start having conversations now about how these items are going to be funded at the local level. We are meeting with county staff. This is a pretty big price tag. And one of the items that we've talked about is with the county staff is whether or not we have the ability to kind of build a 2-year plan for some of these items to phase that in over 2 years, as opposed to giving them this price tag a year from now in full. So really no action needed by the committee or the board at this point, other than we wanted you to be aware that these are the items that if funding was available, specifically local funding, that this is what we would go towards. One of the things that is, I'll give you an example, that is going to be a big priority are our nurses. We've been fortunate to have a nurse in every building since the pandemic. And so the idea that we have working with the county staff is instead of asking for that full amount next year, is there a way to maybe divide that in half and do half this year and half next year? So those are going to be some of the discussions that we have at the county level to figure out how we can sustain. If the funding isn't available, what that means is that we were going to have to look at our own funding within and either redirect funds where we can or use other funding sources like other federal funds to sustain some of this. It's a pretty low dollar amount compared to the total 90 million. But these are the items we think that if we have available funding, we'd like to continue.
Any questions from the committee? Just make one comment.
And I'll go after you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I would also encourage, we need a dialogue with our state delegation that if federal funding goes away, the state would be the next folks that we would come to for some kind of bridge to maintain at least minimal funding for programs as you've shown in this report. I think the state is going to have to step up to what extent they can, since the federal funding would go away, and they have deeper pockets than local governments. So I would hope that they would be at least looking at, we're not the only district that's made use of ESSER funds that will be going away and is looking for some kind of means to sustain some of these programs, because it's going to take longer than just one more year to recover from learning loss. And I think end of grade testing and other test scores are going to bear that out. While we're making progress, we still have a ways to go. And when the funding ends, that means some of these additional services that we're able to provide, we're going to have to find somewhere else to go. And I would say that the state is going to have to step up to some degree, as well as asking local funding sources. Please, Jimmy, your turn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The reason thank you for having such a great outline, but just so that we can help the public, because, you know, we always sometimes people get into why this and why not that. So Dr. Houlihan, you and Ms. McLam, if you can just kind of give some ideas on how we landed here so people will know the extensiveness by which you dove into it to land at these from a both a working point, but also a financial point of what you believe to be possible, just so that they'll kind of know how the sausage was made.
Sure, and I'll start, and then Ms. McLam, you can back in if you want. So we went through a process to identify really the difference between the would be nice to have versus the must have if we're going to remain such a successful organization. The list that you have is really the items that we've identified as the must have. An example of the what we'd like to have would be the funding that the board has allocated through ESSER for retention bonuses. That has cost us over $30 million. And so that would be an item that we would love to have, but we have to recognize that is such a large number. The likelihood of getting that is very little, if zero. So we've tried to really identify those that we think are having the biggest impact, that are tied mostly to people, not programs and services being provided to our children.
Dr.
Ms.
Houlihan,
McLean,
are these
anything?
listed in order of what you see as importance, or are they just all inclusive?
They're not listed in order. They're all inclusive.
What a blessing to know that we are looking at people and not programs specifically, though programs are very important. I'm sure the citizenry will be glad to know that you're looking at how you can best serve personnel and achieving these goals when we lose ESSER. So thank you, Dr. Houlihan, and thank you, our financial genius, Mrs. McLam.
I would second that. It's, although it's a little more than a year away, it's important to note that ESSER funding comes to a screeching halt, and we still have the challenge of the learning loss from the pandemic. And so we are going to have answers from somebody, or all this good programs that have proven to be effective, of which our test scores have shown these programs to be effective, will go away. Any other comments? All right, we'll move on to the next item for information, item B, COVID relief funding update.
Yes, and this is my monthly update to you all, just outlining what allocations we still have remaining, where some I pulled off previously, as we've had one round of ESSER funding, CARES Act, that expired already. You will also see very much the same document with the graphs and all the available funding as well. This is just an FYI. Both of these items will be loaded as FYI items in the board agenda for next week.
All righty. Let's look at, all right. Closing items. Before we close, Ms. McLam, I know you sent me another copy of the timeline, the budget timeline. What is the next date on the timeline that's relevant to our process?
So right now we are currently in the process of going and taking all of the asks and needs for this year's budget cycle. We don't have much state information at this point. There's not been a lot of information about any increases and or changes to retirement or hospital insurance. So I'm building in some projections for all of those items as well, plus any knowns that we have. Right now, I had a February-March timeline for a joint meeting. And actually, I have a March 21st, which I think our next meeting is actually the 28th. At our next meeting, we should be at a point to be presenting the superintendent's budget proposal for board adoption to then become the board's budget, so that we stay on track.
Okay. And as one of the board liaisons to the county commissioners, we are actively trying to schedule a date with county commission representatives Chairman Rushing and Vice Chair Merrill so that we can start to work out some of these issues and have a dialogue, which I am hopeful of for this year. So we'll report back, of course, as soon as we can get some things put down. Our next meeting is March 28th. If there is no other business to come before the committee, I'll look for a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Whoop, sir.
I just had a quick question for Dr. Harris. Dr. Harris, since you're here, it's just on me right now to ask you, how is it going in our hiring right now? How are we positioned? How are we looking? What's a little brief forecast of some things, and if you wanted to chime in on that as well, Dr. Houlihan, feel free. And after that, I have nothing else, Mr. Chairman.
Certainly. So we are ramping up for hiring season. Not to say we haven't been hiring all year. We do have a job fair for our facilities folks on Wednesday. And so we also have our licensed job fair for our teachers, which is our big one, on March the 25th. Then we'll circle back around to our classified employees in July. So we're ramping up for next year, 2023-24. We're also ramping up for summer hiring for our summer programs. So we are moving ahead, sir.
Great. Any other questions, comments for? If not, I'm going to take a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
We stand adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for joining in, especially as.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
No problem.
Have
Bye-bye.
a great day and
Take care.
recovery, Jimmy.